The Australian economy continues to dazzle. The country's Federal Reserve Bank is forecasting a growth in gross domestic product this year of at least 3%, a far higher rate than in most advanced economies. One of the biggest drivers of its success has been its boom in resources. Mining for iron ore, coal, gold and diamonds has generated billions. The Australian dollar has soared in value. The cost of living and the prices in the shops have also taken off. A reporting colleague of ours, Madeline Morris, recently moved back to her native Australia after 12 years in the UK. She knew things would be different, but she didn't realise that her wallet would take such a hammering.
It was the limes that finally tipped me over the edge. In a sleepy Australian seaside village where my parents live, not that far away from several citrus orchards, I was in a supermarket staring at a sign. Limes, $2 25 cents. That's £1.50. Not for a bag, not for a pair, each. Infuriated, I stormed out of the shop, limeless. The country's lost it, I fumed to my mum and dad over dinner that night. The end is nigh. How can anyone afford to eat in this place? Darling, my father replied, look around. People here are rolling in money. We live in an unbelievably wealthy nation. And he's right. In the 12 years since I last called Australia home, it's changed. It was always the lucky country blessed with fertile land, abundant sunshine and plentiful natural resources. Now, we're more than lucky. We're rich. Bloody rich. So rich that no one blinks an eye at paying as much for a lime as some of our neighbours in Asia earn in a day. And you can feel it just by looking at the small stuff. For example, there's no litter on the streets. Nowhere. And I'm yet to see a central reservation where the grass isn't well tended and the attractive shrubs perfectly pruned. It's the cars. I swear there is none on the road that is older than 8 years. They're clean and dent-free and meet strict safety standards. It's the obsession with gourmet food shows, the shiny European appliances and the shiny designer kitchens that seem to be a feature in even the most average family home. It's a seriousness about single origin coffee made by baristas who get paid £17 an hour before tips to bestow their caffeine-laced munificence on their devoted followers. I don't mean to sound flippant. Of course, there is poverty too, and the gap between rich and poor is growing. But the overall feeling I get is that this is a country that can afford to be worried about the small stuff because the bigger things, food, shelter, water, employment, are pretty much taken care of. Australia was one of the few developed nations that came out of the global financial crisis without a recession. It was down to the prudent economic management of the government at the time, but it was also largely because of the huge mining boom we've been riding for nearly a decade. The world, especially China, wants what Australia has in the ground, and it's been willing to pay for it. And it feels to me, a long-lost daughter, that the country has been irrevocably changed as a result. My parents' sleepy seaside village used to be inhabited by retirees and fishing families. Now we share the one pub with hundreds of mine workers who come for their days off to burn money on bottles of spirits and the newly installed slot machines. Their driveways are stacked with fishing boats, jet skis and monster trucks, all the boys' toys. We call them cashed up bogans, which roughly translates as rich urban rednecks. Plenty of money, not much sense. It's a term my middle-class tribe uses disparagingly to make us feel better about being educated but comparatively poor. I asked my taxi driver the other day if he thinks Australians are rich. He was originally from Turkey. He looked at me as though I was stupid. We are living in the lap of luxury here, he said, gesturing to the blue sky and the magnificent city skyline. So I asked him if he thinks Australians are happy. This time, he sighed. When I was at school, my teacher asked us who had to work harder, the poor Africans or the rich Americans, he began. A lot have said the Africans, but my teacher told me no. It was the Americans. They were always working to find ways to pay for their lovely life. Australians are the Americans now. It made a lot of sense. As a country, we are richer than we could have ever imagined 20, even 10 years ago. but we're more anxious too. Worried about our non-existent public debt, worried about what we'll do when the mining boom is over, which it will be soon, worried about how we're going to pay for our next overseas holiday, because that's what we've all come to expect as normal. And me, I'm especially worried about how to make sure the limes on my newly planted lime tree grow, because I sure as hell won't be buying them in a supermarket anytime soon.
Madeline Morris there, looking for gardening tips amongst the cashed-up bogans of Australia, and bringing this edition to a close. I'm here next week with programs on both Thursday and Saturday, and I hope you'll join us then. Goodbye.